Welcome back to Too Much Future, the show where we play through the Fallout games and talk about them. Fallout 4 time. I'm Cameron, and with me as always is Michael.
Hi, everybody.
Big swings in this one, Michael. Already, right out the gate.
Yeah, I'll say.
Because look, this is Fallout 4. Here we are. Okay? There's been multiple Fallouts before this one. Many games. People can listen to previous seasons of Too Much Future. But the thing that I'm interested in, the thing that we got to talk about before we talk about anything else, is the choice to set this in a fantasy world that does not exist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's quite notable considering, I mean, it's basically, a full reboot following from Fallout 3.
Right. They say, what if we imagined a world called Bosstown?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone lived there, and no one was mean or a jerk for no reason. And there was a guy with a silly hat running around. Boo. And a dog who whined and cried because it was shot constantly. And hit by grenades and Molotov cocktails. And everyone thought that was awesome to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty, I don't know. It's a little silly for me coming right out.
Yeah. Pretty strange. Like, hard to follow, hard to believe, really, that there would be people who would live in a place called Bosstown.
Yeah, it's bizarre. All these, like, weird little towns. Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
Concrad.
Mm-hmm.
Lexapro.
And this, like, strange fantasy, like this background, like this Fallen Kingdom type thing they've got going on with all these, like, red, white, and blue flags.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not into it.
Yeah.
Good ep.
Yep. All right. That's it. That's Fallout 4, everybody. Bye.
No, we're playing Fallout 4. That's just a bit. It's just a silly little bit. Making fun of stuff. Making fun of Boston. Bastion. Is that how it sounds? Is that how they sound up there?
I mean, they can. It's not how they sound in the game, at least yet. I'll have more to say about the game's pronunciation in the next episode, probably.
Can't Bastion. So it is interesting that an accent that has developed, transformed, morphed over the past, 300 years? 200 years into the future would disappear.
Yeah.
It's a little odd.
Yeah.
I guess the reason I'm poking on all this is that Fallout 4 takes place in the Boston area, broadly.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is a unique circumstance because I did not live in Bogland, Maryland. You did not live in the Mojave. I did not live in the Capital Wasteland. But you do live in the greater Boston area.
I do, yeah. And so this is the first Fallout game and only Fallout game in which I am poking around places that are analogs to places that I have actually been.
How is that?
Well, so far, I mean, the game starts you kind of in sort of like the northwest of the Boston metro area, right around Lexington, Concord. And I have not spent that much time up there. I mostly have spent my time in town and also like on the South Shore. And the South Shore isn't in the game. So I will say, poking around as I have done at this point, what is notable, I guess, and especially compared to like Fallout 3, is that they have learned some lessons about terrain and topography. Whereas the Capital Wasteland was kind of just very often a flat expanse with piles of junk. There is a kind of like up and down movement as you're running around, like between Sanctuary Hills and Concord and sort of in the woods around that area. That is pretty similar to how it feels when you're walking around in like the foothills heading up into New Hampshire.
So you're saying it's kind of real.
I mean, it's real in the sense that they designed an area that feels more like this place than the previous area that they designed, I guess. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time in DC, right? So I don't know how much of it is a flat expanse filled with trash. I imagine quite a bit. But, it's just in terms of like feeling the difference between Fallout 3 and this game, that was actually really notable was, sort of noticing that there is a lot of like elevation stuff going on that actually feels a lot more like what was going on in the Mojave with New Vegas.
Mm-hmm. Learn some lessons maybe from making some mountains and telling you can go there.
Yeah, there's also like a good bit of Skyrim juiced in here as well, but
there's a lot of Skyrim juiced in here.
Mm-hmm.
But including taking place in the fantasy world. What we are doing here, though, right? If you've made it about 10 minutes in this episode, we analyze the Fallout games. We talk about them. We have a good. It's not. I wouldn't say this is as rigorous as our other shows.
Mm-hmm.
A little more tutti frutti.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Rudy.
Mm-hmm. That's typically what I oppose to rigor. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Rudy. Babaloo, bop, bam, boom. That's actually what I oppose to rigor is Little Richard's bop, babaloo, bop, bam, boom. But that means that we got to talk about the intro because how did I say war war. It does not change, right? As the French Canadians say, and it doesn't here, or actually it does. It actually war changes quite a bit here. I think war has changed the most it's ever changed here at the opening of Fallout 4.
Yeah.
So I knew this was coming. Did this like really sideswipe you on the way out?
On the way in.
On the way in,
yeah. I guess the other thing to be clear on here for those listening is that I have not played Fallout 4. Of all the games that we've played for this show, this is the only one that I haven't played. I just sort of unplugged. Well, I think when did this come out? 2015. So that was like 2015, 2016. So that was like right at the end of grad school for me, where I was finishing up my dissertation, and I really kind of unplugged from new game releases, and also I really haven't plugged myself back in since. But I didn't play Fallout 4. I know very little about it other than that, it has this kind of, it's the Boston area, and I know that the sort of meta plot that we're heading toward builds off of stuff about like androids from Fallout 3. There was a quest about this, and I know that it all sort of like builds into that. So this intro, which I hadn't seen before, was a real sideswipe. I am going to try to be a charitable person throughout this entire run, but I really must say that this intro cinematic thing is one of the most asinine things I have ever seen in a video game.
It really, so I reviewed this game when it came out, and I really haven't played it since then, right? So I like powered through the whole thing in like a week or something, probably like knowing Bethesda, probably like 5 days actually. So I like hammered through it, and yeah, you're right. In November of 2015. And is when the game came out, but I've not touched it, not installed it, not thought about it since then, and I don't think I even wrote about this part in the review. I don't remember if I did. I didn't go back and read the review. But it's a big swing in a way that, like, war never changes. We've talked about this at the first episode of every season of the show. War never changes gets a little bit looser every time, right? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense in Fallout 1, like, conceptually, but at least there's some sort of, broad argument being made, right? Like, humans do war, and war is bad. And the fact that we want to do war is the thing that's, like, internal to us, right? Like, like, we are fallen, and we got to do war. And like the examples and the way that works, that's the thing we kind of quibbled with or had questions about in that because they don't make a lot of sense. And ever since that, it gets a little bit more wiggly, right? A little bit more loose. The center ain't holding here, as the poet once said. And we got to Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout New Vegas is kind of like, hey, war never changes. Here's the plot of the game you're about to play.
Yeah.
Right? And that seemed fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
This, it's like they just took just some stuff and stapled War Never Changes on the top and bottom.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have anything to do, the text in the middle has nothing to do with the War Never Changes thing that is at the top and bottom of it, right? Like it's so removed.
Well, it's like what it does, right? What the War Never Changes does. And it starts out War Never Changes. Also not read by Ron Perlman, just by the way, right? That's a big difference here.
Read by Ron Howard, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
War never changes.
War, in fact, did change.
War's different now. Did war change? Or no, it's like one of the Bluths is there, and they're like, "War's about to change." Like Job Bluth, war's about to change, and then Ron Howard shows up and he says, "It didn't."
Yes, like footage missing.
Yeah.
So it starts with the War Never Changes thing, and then we zip straight into this bizarre Band of Brothers circa 2005 World War II Greatest Generation nostalgia.
That it's so very funny that you say that. That's my exact thought. I was like, what is this Band of Brothers thing doing at the beginning of a Fallout? Yeah.
Yeah, so and it's like the narrator talking about his great-great-grandfather fighting in World War II in 1945, and then mentioning that ends. Actually, how this I wrote this down. How this is specifically phrased is that America ended World War II by dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then the world awaited Armageddon. Instead, something miraculous happens. And I understand on one level what this is doing, because then it's it goes into how nuclear energy became more widely accepted. It's setting up the division point, right? Fallout is an alternate history that deviates sometime around World War II. Right, that's where the timeline splits from known history.
Right.
So, I guess one of the weird things that this does, and that is kind of I sense, I don't know if this is true, we'll see how it is as we play through it, but one of the things that this is doing, I think, is really truly setting up a kind of reboot, right? Whereas Fallout 3 was kind of a reboot that was pointing to Fallouts 1 and 2 and sort of trying to thread those two strands together into kind of this new thing. Fallout 4 feels in many ways like it's trying to not exactly wipe the slate clean, but draw a line where anything before that line isn't as important as what's going to come after. So here, we're basically getting a recontextualization of what this world is, and we're getting it turns out, as we continue to listen to this and move into the game. We're getting it from a pre-war person, which is kind of a unique thing in your mainline Fallout games up until this point, right? This is it turns out that this character is someone who is living on the eve of the Great War, and this is him reflecting on his position in whatever this society is, which, for as much as I might criticize how this opening works, one thing that I do like about it is just how explicit it gets, perhaps unintentionally, on what has been fascinating to me about the pre-war, or the pre-war world of Fallout from the beginning, which is just this idea of what if the 50s lasted way too long?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. In the whole structure of what you just said, because it is 100% a reboot of Fallout positioned as Fallout 4.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of solidifies some of the I don't know, general thoughts that the games present but don't really confirm, because like in Fallout 3, I think you can read that like the 50s went on forever. But that's not really entirely the vibe, say, in the vaults, right? Like,
Right.
there's not people wearing these like like right before mod style clothing showing up in the 60s. You know what I mean? Like the kind of clean lines of the 50s housewife dress and all that kind of stuff. That's not really in Fallout 3 anywhere. The things like business hats in the business suit, right? Like those do, and those look very 1950s. But you don't get like the full aesthetic. You know, the furniture doesn't really look like it's from the 50s necessarily. And here in Fallout 4, everything is locked in like 59. Right? Like it's right on the edge of like the kind of clean modernism of the 60s stuff, like bulbous shapes and then like sharp angles made out of soft stuff. So, you know, like a really sharp looking couch, you know, but it's made of, you know, that's got that like, you know, I don't know, it's made of a soft material, but it's held together by like a hard frame. And so you get this kind of clean looking thing. So I think you're right. There's this thing where they have solidified the aesthetic of the pre-war world. And they have to do that because of what the intro is. But the other thing that's really interesting to me about the intro cinematic here is that historically, it has been used for two things: tone setting and like big, broad philosophical statements. Right? And it has rarely been about people. Meaning that it's like the intro cinematics, as far as I can remember, they're not like, and then that guy showed up, and here he is, cinematically. I mean, we get a little bit of the like most recent history stuff in New Vegas. You know, like, here are the main figure, here's Caesar, all that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of attached to that. But you know, it's not someone's story, I guess is what I'm saying. And here you get this like visual unity between the pre-war world, all this Band of Brothers shit, and, you know, and I say that lovingly, of course, to Band of Brothers, and evil David Schwimmer. Top 10 anime betrayals of all time. David Schwimmer showing back up in Band of Brothers. But, so you get that, but then you get an explicit, like, alignment with the white homeland with the atomic age and like winning the war. I mean, it's hard to dodge it. And like it's inheriting racial politics. So, you know, it's hard to blame this game specifically too much for that. You know, this is what we've gotten throughout the rest of the games. And certainly in the other games in general, in various places, right? Particularly Fallout 1 and 2, there's this kind of like looming specter of social oppression that was going on at the same time, you know, like
there was like a fascist crackdown happening in the streets immediately in the run-up to the bombs dropping.
Right. And we know that the people who were in government at the time, I mean, we meet them in Fallout 2, you know, as they become the Enclave, you know, they're all, eugenicist fascists, right? You know, that's like the turn in that game is like, hey, did you know that everyone who was in power before the war was a huge asshole and evil? And they're like, it's like that stapled onto Nixon, you know, as the Fallout 2. If people don't remember that, you can go back and listen to those. Watch the episodes about the end of Fallout 2. But so what's so fascinating to me is it's like, hey, not only are we getting the intro that's kind of like reconfiguring some of the stuff, focusing on some different things, but we get the image of the wife and child. Right? Like we get a visual indicator of who this character, right? Like this specific character you are about to embody. This is who they are imagining back home. And it is, a white child, white wife. And then we get, this like kind of saccharine, I don't know, justification for Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that like war, we stand on the brink of total war, and I am afraid for myself, for my wife, and my infant son, because if my time in the army taught me one thing, it's that war never changes. That doesn't mean anything. Number one, right? Like it taught me one thing, it's that war never changes. What are you saying? But the rest of the framework here is like, it's a framework of racial protectionism on accident, I think entirely, right? But it is 100% the kind of reproduction of greatest generation racial politics into the Fallout universe.
Right.
And then default sets everyone to be a white person. Right?
Yeah, there is one person who shows up in this intro cinematic who is not white, and it is like an Asian man who is a Chinese invader.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Shot from the bottom up. What do you call it? Triumph of the Will style, right?
Yep.
He's very much in that mode. So like cinematically, this is just reading. Weirdly enough, I don't know how much the game is actually inheriting from this, right? In the sense of, I've played a couple hours now, or a few hours, I guess, for the first couple episodes. And, I don't think the game necessarily embodies any of this kind of stuff, but the transformation of a generalized philosophical statement that has existed at the beginning of all these other games into a direct narrative about a human being in a game where presumably you get to play whoever you want, right? That's like the whole fun of Fallout, or part of the fun of Fallout, is you create your own character. And like this game's like, hey, you can really create your own character. I spent like a full 20 minutes in the character editor just doodling around in this game. But then it's like it plops you down and like you're this white couple and that's the default, and there was a cinematic equivalence to them, right? Like,
right.
It's not as if, it's the default and it's whatever, but they were over there. This is what they canonically look like. And I guess you can change them if you want. And it seems a little bit weird to me. As opposed to something like, Fallout 3, I think, did a lot better job with this, where it's like you create your character based on that, like, what will your son look like in the future? Let's see. Let's look. You create your character, and you can make him look however you want. And then your dad looks like you, right? It kind of takes on some of the skin coloration and some of the traits of the character you make, which is like, it does a pretty good job of writing into the world the player's wishes, desires, their, the racial makeup of their character. I think that was actually, I don't know if we highlighted that, but that's like an interesting maneuver to happen in that thing. And this undoes all of that, I think.
Right. Yeah, it feels like pretty egregious, right? Especially following on from Fallout 3 to go from, the other thing here, right? The other thing that really thwarts my first, let's say 4 minutes of experience with this game is that it goes through all this. It has this guy narrating it, war never changes and everything. And then it turns out, he's like, this is like an embodied, principle that an actual person in the world has. And it's the person you're going to play. The person who is standing in the bathroom, and it's just some guy. I don't know who this is. I've never played this person. I'm Eleanor.
That is the weird thing, right? Is that there's this alignment of like, look, we're all just downstream from the datification of games, right? Like, you can feel them being like, all right, we're living in a time of increased stakes of video games, of really the development of video game narrative. We got The Last of Us, we got BioShock. What do people like? Well, they like dads, but we already did that. We already did Finding Your Dad. What if you were the dad?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to do something else? That's fine. Whatever. You can do that. But what if you were the dad? What if you were structurally a dad? What if women were dads, right? Like,
yes.
There's this like kind of thing where it's like the whole narrative is wrapped around this like very linear mindset. And it's like, whatever you want to do with it, that's fine. But you got to be that dad. But yeah, I do actually like there's something cool about playing a woman in this game. Because, and of course, we get these binary genders, you can be male or female, and that's all they give you. But I do like the idea that where it's like you hit the like little change sex button or whatever, right? And she's like, all right, my turn now. And she like transposes positions. I think that's cool.
That is. It is nice how this is kind of like all sort of in a continuous like space, right?
And then like you switch and then you're her for eternity. Like there's something very interesting about that. The thing too that I like is that you can change her and then switch back to him, and then she stays as whatever you changed her to. Which is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. There's something really weird going on with War Never Changes. It's truly just like this weird narrative about a character's personality in the world and their perspective on the world, as you were saying, that you have to then kind of like take on as a player, which is just very different than the rest of the games. This character is really not a blank slate. They're like a war hero.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't care. Like, my character is a housewife and a lawyer.
How'd you become a lawyer?
I don't know, but when I was like puttering around the house, I could look at a shelf and there was like a framed like JD diploma or something, and my character was like, all those like late nights at class or something.
Curious. What a curious thing to learn about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, that's part of it too, is I don't know how much Fallout 4 holds on to the kind of social system, right? Because the way that the Fallout Bible talks about it, the way that Fallout 1 and 2 kind of talk about it, particularly Fallout 2, and Fallout 3 kind of dodges all this, so who knows, right? But like the going assumption that I have about this is like Jim Crow kept going on.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's part of, I think, Fallout 2. If that's not the case, I don't know where I absorbed that from, but I think that we get some information about that.
Yeah, it's in Fallout 2 or the Fallout Bible where I think it is explicitly outlined that the civil rights movement never happened.
Right. I do, yeah. So it may be in that timeline as well, too, in the Fallout Bible. But anyway, so we don't really know. But like, what's interesting is that it keeps the opening intro keeps the resource wars stuff, right? So like we had a bunch of nuclear energy, but we ran out of everything else, I guess. A little unclear. But resource wars occurred. And so then therefore, like everyone revolted and society broke down and the nuclear war broke out. But it's like, well, under what conditions were they, who was unhappy,
right,
and why? That seems important. But maybe we'll get more of that in the game. I truly do not remember. It's been like 7 years since I played this game. So I don't know. You make your character. Hey, did you spend a lot of time in character creation?
No. I mean, I saw how weird, this guy looked. He's got like this giant blonde pompadour and these awful like goatee and these tiny beady little eyes. And I'm like, I'm not going to play that. And I switched over to the lady character, and I did what I always do for Eleanor, which is kind of go through some presets and just put together what is kind of, the closest to my platonic vision of Eleanor.
What's your platonic vision? Like, is there like a person in the world that you style her off, or is it just like basically thinking back to like Fallout 3 and whatever you had there and just trying to replicate it? Because you did a pretty good job from Fallout 3 to Fallout New Vegas of replicating her.
Yeah. I mean, I think of her as someone with, kind of like, she's got like brown skin. She wears glasses. You can't put on glasses in any of the character creators in these games, though. But like, it is hard canon for me. Eleanor wears glasses. Mm-hmm. And she tends to have a kind of like, unobtrusive hairstyle, right? Sort of not like super stylish. I think of her like my real true like mental image of Eleanor. She's not based on anyone visually, but my like image of her now especially is New Vegas, of her like wearing her glasses and her like little red beret and just like stone-facedly pulling up her gun and like firing someone's head off.
Powerful.
Yep.
I'm surprised there's not Eleanor or Tonk fanfic yet.
I wouldn't know. I haven't looked.
You're going to look right now?
Okay, let's pull it up. Let's see here.
Okay, let's see.
Archive of Our Own. Too Much Future.
Too Much Future. I'm looking at 2. Let's see. Nah. Doesn't look like it.
Oh, dang.
That's our disappointment, you can hear.
Yep.
Someone needs to write Tonk and Eleanor fanfic. Not anything rude.
Apparently, so searching for Too Much Future and Archive of Our Own points me straight to a chapter of fanfic for Encanto, chapter 2, Too Much Future.
Great.
From a fic called Loose Cannons.
They should put Fallout in Encanto.
Yeah. Sorry for whoever I just pointed all of our listenership at. Your hurt comfort and Encanto fic. I do the same thing. I kind of put together a Tonk.
he historically has had mutton chops, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't look that great in this game. I'm going to be honest with you. So he got like kind of like a messy goatee.
Mm-hmm.
So you get done with that, and then you got to take care of your little baby.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take care of your little baby.
Yeah,
baby Sean.
I spent around like 10 minutes just like walking around the house ignoring all this stuff, trying to see if anything would happen.
Right.
It doesn't.
No, because you have to funnel the player into the narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, normally these games turn into immediately like a tutorial.
Yeah.
Like all of them, right? It's like, hey there, you want to do a Rorschach test? This game gets rid of all that stuff. Like, it's like, instead of the kind of, here's some weird little missions you have to do to like figure out your dude, Morrowind style, now you have to just like fill out the thing. Look, we all know what we're doing here. Fill out the character sheet, little D&D player. Fill out your character sheet, and then you get to play the game, okay? Mm-hmm. Don't use that little slot machine or whatever, the sarsaparilla machine. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. So there's something interesting here about the tone change as well, of like what the player expectation is.
Right.
Because, you're stuck in not into a situation, but into a narrative. Mm-hmm. And it is like, you got a little domestic home, got this little atomic thing. You're on the street. You got a little robot. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this: that house is too small to have a big robot in it.
It's so small, and that robot is really quite large. Codsworth is a pretty big guy.
Codsworth will not shut the hell up.
No.
That robot talking all the time. How you feel about that robot? How you feel about that robot talking?
So, I mean, Eleanor traditionally is, very interested in party members. Codsworth would not shut up, so I, ran around with dog meat, even though I do not like running around with dog meat, because, as you say, this means that, I have to listen to a dog whining as it is being, eternally gunned down by machine gun fire.
Yeah, it's awful. It is truly awful. I hate it. Nothing like listening to my dog give out a yelp as it stands upon a hand grenade it doesn't know how to avoid, right? Like, what are you doing? What is happening in this video game? But yeah, so you like bebop around in the little house. There's news, talking about war might be happening. War never changes, but it might be happening. And there's a little bit of announcement going on. And it's kind of replicating some of the announcer voices that we've gotten before in the games. Sean, your little baby is crying. What is up with video games naming kids Sean?
I don't know. I feel like this was 2015. Someone in that room, in that meeting, had to have known that they were setting themselves up for just endless heavy rain references.
Right. What is it about? I just don't know what it is about Sean that is like, because, you have to make these names. You got to make them in such a way that people hear them and don't find them alienating. Right. Like if the baby's name was McGrotha the Haggard, we would be like, what? What's going on here? And if his name was Bertrand or Cogsworth, we'd be like, what's going on here? But so you're right. Sean is, it's like designed by committee, right? Like everyone agreed that Sean fits, and you're right. And it's like, what? Remember press X to Sean? You didn't. Yeah. No one thought that might be a little bit of a weird thing, or maybe they were like, that's a benefit. Everyone knows the name Sean already.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about it about people being like, wait a minute, what's this Sean name you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't. It's such a such a small thing, but it's like a thing that really, if you think about it, really starts sticking out, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why Sean?
Yeah,
all the names.
Well, and especially because your character, the player character's default names are Nate and Nora.
Nate, Nora, and Sean, the atomic family living in the eternal 1950s.
Right.
Perfect. Someone knocks on the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little salesman.
Mm-hmm. I ignore him for 10 minutes.
You ignored him for 10 minutes?
Yeah, I just walked around seeing if anything would happen. And it's so funny because my husband is just standing there like, I wonder who's going to give in first, us or him.
Well, what'd you say to him?
The salesman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like
No,
shut
your
him.
husband.
No, you
when
can't
had the
respond
long
to
form.
him, right?
Right.
You can't say anything or pick anything up or do anything. They really don't want you to get distracted here. So I just like shoved myself into a corner and spun in circles. And like nothing happened. So eventually I opened the door and I shut down the salesman at every opportunity. The new dialogue system, I have some complicated feelings about. But I just chose the most negative and hostile dialogue option with that Vault-Tec salesman every single time. Like, because he's like, you need to fill out your paperwork to get into the vault. And I'm like, I'm not interested. Not going to do it. No, thank you. And then eventually my husband says, fine, I'll do it. And then the menu pops up and I still have to fill out the goddamn paperwork.
That's really funny. That's great. Tonk is very accommodating.
Uh-huh.
You know, in a general sense, that's kind of his vibe. He's not
Yeah.
really a negative guy, and so yeah, I just smacked on stuff and said, "Hey, I'm happy to do it. Hey, guys, I'm happy to do it."
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that you don't get to choose your voice. And I understand why you can't do that.
Right.
That obviously, you know, there's like a million. Every line that you do is voiced. You know, it's fairly long. You know, it's a couple sentences. That's not possible, right? I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a complaint that has any kind of attachment to reality, and yet I still have that complaint because I just don't think that the guy sounds like Tonk.
Yeah, and I don't think that this sounds like Eleanor, really, right? I also understand, right? It's the same reason you can't choose Commander Shepard's voice, like,
Yeah,
right?
I get it. You don't have to get in the comments and be like, "Hey, well, this is why they didn't do that." We know why, but we wish it were different.
Right.
I wish that I could choose because Tonk's voice sounds like this. He's kind of like a wise guy in my head, and he's hit you with a hammer, and that's funny to me. He's like that in the high hat, like that guy from Miller's Crossing.
Yes.
Kind of like a combo there.
Mm-hmm.
Like two gangsters. Much like many of us, inside of us are two gangsters. The gangster who talks like this, and the gangster who talks like this. And they are at war with one another.
Yeah.
Basically, I think I just described the weasels from
Grand Roger Rabbit, yeah.
Yeah, I think I did. But he has you fill out the stuff, and it's like you write your name.
Mm-hmm.
And then your special stats, right?
Yep.
Where'd you go with special stats? You don't have to give me the exact numbers because I don't have mine, but you got some raw ideas.
Well, so I when I say I don't really know anything about this game, I mean that truly. So I don't really know, and I have been trained by earlier Fallout games, and I understand like why this would not pertain here, but I've been trained by earlier Fallout games to be very suspicious of how you build your character because it can lock you into like certain situations.
Mm-hmm, you don't say.
Yeah. This time I mean I'm still trying to go through with the typical Eleanor like play style, which is shooty, like sneaky, sort of talky. And in this particular case, so this means I put most of my points into like charisma, whatever the heck A is, agility, a little bit in perception, and then some. This is the holdover from last season. Just a little bit of extra in luck. So I can get those sweet criticals. I don't know, for whatever reason, I've decided that in addition to being shooty and sneaky, being a kind of like crit centric build is something that is interesting to me.
I'm all strength and endurance, and then everything else is just kind of whatever. I did put some points for Tonk in intelligence this time. I got up to I think 4 because that determines how many experience points you get. And that's always been the case, but I don't want to have to like grind or nothing. You know what I'm saying? To get these abilities. So I did a little bit of that. I think that's basically it, and because you can, with level ups, buy points in skills or buy points in special stats, which is like very different from the rest of the games, it doesn't really matter so much. You can always level up your way into these things. Speaking of, there's no tagged skills anymore. They have finally gotten rid of, I think, one of the critical parts of Fallout. which is like you're a character with centralized D&D-ish stats or GURPSy kind of stats. And then you have like a bunch of specificities that are in relationship to those stats, but also not directly, determined by them. And so you just have to like wait to level up. You can't decide that you're like an explosives character or whatever,
right?
And it's a bummer to me.
Yeah, I mean I don't feel as strongly about it, but it is interesting to see where these changes get made, right? Like, how is sort of the older system of character creation being revised here or smoothed out? And, I do kind of miss the idea of having the more specific kind of character.
Yeah, as opposed to like someone who could be good at everything to begin with. And I guess eventually on a long enough timeline on those games, you can be good at everything, but you don't start good at everything. I don't know. Yeah. Nuclear war happens.
Yeah. Like minutes after you finish filling out your paperwork.
I mean, thank God we filled out that paperwork, though, right?
I know. Jesus.
What would have happened if we hadn't?
So, yeah. And then you, like, run up to the thing, like, because there's a vault. Like, luckily, not only have you filled out your paperwork 5 minutes before Armageddon, but the, like, vault that you're supposed to be in is literally up the street and to the right a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you and your spouse, I guess. I was going to say you and your husband, but in my case, it was me and my husband. Mm-hmm. He's, like, holding the baby. And we're, like, running around through the thing. Everyone's screaming. You go up.
I guess, just really quickly to say, based on what you just said, compulsive heterosexuality going on here.
Yep.
You can only be husband-wife. I mean, that should be pretty obvious from what we're saying, but, kind of a bummer.
Yep. Well, War Never Changes. We go up.
That's what actually War Never Changes is about.
Compulsory heterosexuality.
Yes. Can you imagine Ron compulsory heterosexuality never changes? Fallout would be better if it started with that. I'm sorry to detract. So yeah, you start running.
Yeah. You get up on, like, I mean, the environment design here is pretty interesting, right? Because they have put the vault entrance up on kind of this hill so you can look down and kind of see the neighborhood that you just came from. And then when everyone is on the little platform, the vaults have been redesigned also, right? It's not like just like you go down into a cave and then there's a big gear door. Now there's like a big gear elevator that you take down to the big gear door. And so the second your elevator starts to descend, you see the bomb drop, and then the cloud or like the shockwave or whatever comes like rolling over you just as you're descending. Whoa, just in the nick of time. And then you're in the vault.
You're down there, yeah. I really like that the vault tech salesman is trying to get in, and they won't let him in.
Yes. This game...
go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, the one note about this game, at least for the parts that I played so far, and I think it applies here as well as in the next episode, this game, on the whole, not as, like, Fallout humory, right? Not as wacky, but there are these little moments of, like, a sort of dark comedy like that.
Yeah, at least in the beginning, no wackiness, only dark comedy, right? And only like the manipulative machinations, I guess, of vault tech, right? Because what happens is you go down there and they're like, hey, you got to put on this jumpsuit, Buster. Like, all right, cool. And they're like, hey, you want to get down here? We got to get you in this decontamination pod. Let me put you in this decontamination pod. And you go, okay, all right, sure.
And you, the player, who are familiar with the series, are like, this isn't normal, as far as I'm aware.
Right. You're saying, uh-oh, I think there's some... And, I mean, they're big pods, and they look kind of like the pods from Fallout 3, right? The VR pods that people got locked into. And if you didn't know anything about it, and you just played the games, you had no other context, maybe that's what you would think, I could imagine that. But nope, you get in there, and you get cryogenically frozen. What do you think about this?
I think that they are VR pods, and the end of this game is going to turn out that you've been in a VR simulation this entire time.
Okay.
Yeah, that's straight up what I sincerely believe. No, so a bit more, a bit less facetiously. I guess this is fine. Like, like it's clear that this game in particular, and Bethesda but since Bethesda took over Fallout, the games have been preoccupied with the old world in a way that Fallout 1 and 2 really truly aren't. And I'm not saying that that's I'm not saying that that is better necessarily, right? But it is like very distinct. And while I like the way that Bethesda sort of imagines out the pre-war world, I don't know if I just like in general the idea of you being a pre-war person who shows up in the post-apocalypse.
Yeah, there's like a weird thing you got to do, right? Because the previous two games have left you in a weird spot, you know, like narratively. The Fallout 3 gives you a vault dweller, you know, and it's like, hey, guess what? You've been in a vault, and that's why you don't know jack shit about the world. Right. But actually you have a bunch of connections out here because your dad wasn't a vault dweller, you know? And then New Vegas is like, you're not a vault dweller, and you have like a whole history out here. And it's going to be very annoying when you learn about it.
Yeah.
From a guy who won't shut the hell up about it.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, all right, well, we've kind of done both of the, you know, it's hard to sell another sealed vault dweller thing. And you're a blank slate, blah, blah, blah. So like they got to get to a blank slate somehow. You know, I don't think Bethesda can do the Fallout New Vegas thing of like giving you history.
No.
I just don't think they can like handle it.
I mean, it feels like they have some sort of internal like principle or documentation or something that suggests like the player needs the blank slate in order to relate to their character.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Right.
And look, I interviewed someone the other day for a project. So like probably the interview never comes out for anything. It's just kind of informing another thing I'm working on. Interviewed a very prominent game director, not for this franchise, but for some other stuff. And who said even in like straight up narrative games, like the thing, you know, games with very strong characters, internal to the game dev cultures that they've been a part of, it is always the idea of like, how do you blank slateify even this highly narrativized character, right? With all kinds of thoughts and feelings and backstory to them. How do you write them in such a way, and how do you figure them into the narrative in that they can be essentially a blank slate, even when they aren't literally a blank slate, right? So I'm not shocked that like Bethesda specifically wants to maintain that. So yeah, I think that is certainly like a first principle for them. And so yeah, the way they do it here is by like making you literally from another world. You know, you might as well be an alien.
Yes.
I want that one.
Yeah.
Fallout 5, the spaceship from Mothership Zeta coming down. You're one of those people. You're the samurai from feudal Japan.
I was going to say, yeah, you're someone who got abducted and now the aliens are done with you and you're just back on Earth.
Yeah, and you just never talk about it again. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you get frozen and you get woken up, but something happens in the middle before you get woken up.
Yeah. This like massive pompadour wearing stranger across from me who's holding a child that is allegedly mine gets shot.
Yeah, someone comes, they crack open the cooler. They try to steal Sean. They don't try. They steal Sean. And then they shoot your spouse. Kaboom. Welcome to video games.
Yeah.
This is the modern video game. I mean, right? Like, it's really bizarre that the annihilation of the co-parent in the age of the video game. But so that happens, and you just got to deal with it. And it's actually that comes up. It's like the glasses, drop off the top of the screen. They land on the frog, and it says deal with it as your spouse is being murdered. And then you wake up, sometime later, you wake up and your spouse is over there, all frozenified. Still, you can crack open the cooler and you can get their wedding ring. Did you do that?
No.
It's worth 250 caps, dude.
Who am I going to sell it to?
You could use it to make a lamppost later.
Okay, maybe I'll go back and collect the ring so I can make a lamppost.
Should make a memorial lamppost for your dead spouse. Fallout. So this is what we've decided you can do in Fallout 4. What if you could take your dead spouse's wedding ring and turn it into a memorial mailbox? You can write letters to your dead spouse using the companion app. It's 2015. Wild. That's one step away from something you could do in a video game.
It is.
But yeah, so you do that, and then you go out and you learn how to do stuff. You know, I punched a bunch of little cockroaches or whatever.
Yeah, you get
Bing, bang, boom.
You learn that
good.
there was an overseer of this vault. Wow, incredible. And there was supposed to be like an all clear from Vault Tech like 180 days after the bombs dropped, and it never came. And then there was some sort of like staff mutiny, and then everyone died, and also everyone in all of the other pods is dead. You're the only person who lived. And this is another kind of interesting thing where I learn all this stuff by digging through a terminal. As Eleanor loves to do. And one thing I've noticed so far about all the terminals that I've looked at is that they are all extremely expository, as this is. Yeah. There's no sense of like specific character to this vault. It's just like, here is what happened here.
Yeah, that is something I think is pretty interesting about kind of everything so far about this game. It really takes a different line from any of the other Fallouts in that there's very little perspective.
Uh-huh.
Like it's expository in the sense that like someone could have come along after the fact and written about whatever happened here in the third person, and that's essentially what we get, right? It's like, and then on day 2, blah blah blah, and then on day 3, blah blah blah. But it's never from the perspective of like a character inherently, right? So it's like in previous Fallouts, in Fallout 3, for example, we would have gotten like, oh, I think the security officer, he's got it in for me ever since, whatever, I stole his beef jerky. I hope that doesn't come to bite me in the ass, right? There would be a little bit of a nudge to it or something. And here it's just like, this is what occurred. And we get the smallest amount of it here in a way that is not in any of the other terminals that I've read in the first couple hours. Where he's like, yeah, the all clear from Vault Tech should be coming, but we can't like leave because we would all die of radiation poisoning. So I don't want to do that. So I guess I'm going to see if people stay. And then like the security officers revolt. It's always the Vault Tech security officers who revolt. Right? Like war never changes and the Vault Tech cops are bad.
Yep.
Like those are the two, poles, axioms of Fallout. But you leave. You go up there, lo and behold, there's been an apocalypse.
Well, before Eleanor leaves, she pauses. You get like your confirmation screen, and she reflects a little on all that's happened to her, right? She's lost a spouse, she's lost a baby, and so she undergoes a little bit of a change. She opens up the character customization menu, and she puts on all the black eyeshadow that she can find to show that she is in mourning, and she changes her hairstyle to be a little more mussed and in sort of haggard looking.
Oh my God. Some kind of fallen Eleanor.
Yeah. Some sort of Nile-Nor.
Oh no! But yeah, so then we pop out of the vault, take the elevator, you pop out of the vault. By the way, I got a new video card. Shout out to me.
Shout out
to me for purchasing the thing. Got a new video card. Got a nice price dip, being thrifty out there. And it allows me to run Fallout 4 on ultra settings for everything. So it looks cool.
Yeah.
I will say Fallout 4 looking pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think I'm running everything on ultra settings, but the game does look nice.
Looks cool. Got some great animations because, of course, I play the game in third person. And there's some really interesting character animations that happen in the game. Oh, also this, because I'm in third person mode, I can actually initiate conversation with people with my back turned to them. And then what happens is when it cuts to you to make dialogue decisions, you're looking over your shoulder like you're in like a cool anime. So like when I was talking to the Vault Tech rep, he's like, hey, you want to fill out these out? And I was like, why would I do that? Why would I be doing that? Why do you want my information? Why does the government need to know about me? So it's very funny looking. And then sometimes the game is like, but you need to be facing it, so it like glitches and you see the character model like whoo-wah, like around, like do a 180 real quick and then turn back around. It's funny. It's in the video footage. But so I'm like running this bad boy on Ultra, and it actually makes the load times when you go into the overworld like a full minute long. Just black screen, nothing, and then like a photorealistic Boston. And so that's been an interesting thing to kind of deal with. I don't know if I'm going to keep everything that way because the load times are very long, but it is very funny. But you go out here and Cogsworth's there.
Yeah.
Cogsworth is there in your old house. And he's like, Master, I don't know how I feel about this like butler 19th century thing, by the way.
Yeah, he calls me Mum.
Mum. Calls me Master. I don't know about that. And he's like, oh, I'm bored. Help me do stuff.
It's so hard scrubbing like the nuclear fallout out of floors or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think you have to do that, do you?
I don't think so either. But I don't know. He's a robot. He's got different priorities.
That's true. He can see nuclear fallout too, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. He like. I don't know. Like this is where the game kind of starts getting away from me a little bit because he's like, well, let's go look around the neighborhood. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he goes off and he does that. And I just like poke around the house. And then eventually I run in. I don't know what he's doing or why he's doing it. And then I run into him again. This is also actually like a little bit of a play style issue that I'm still sort of like figuring out, having not experienced this game before. In some ways, it's like a callback to Fallout 1 and 2, where I don't have time for Codsworth. I'm just like telling him to shut up. And so he like does. And like I'm getting none of the plot. But anyway, I run into him again. And then he tells me to go to like the neighboring city. Or no, he doesn't tell me to go there. He says he like saw some people in Concord, which is a town nearby.
Yep. And you're like, well, where's Sean? Sean! And he says,
yeah,
why don't you go look in Concord? But he does have you like go around. And this is the second place where the game totally broke for me. Again, I think based on maybe some graphic settings.
Oh, yeah.
I'm having like here I was having a weird issue where I would like kill stuff really quickly. And then Codsworth like would not accept that. And I had to like run way far away from him and then come back and talk to him. The other time is when I made the character for like a solid 15 minutes. As soon as I clicked next to play the game crashed. But again, that might be a hardware software issue, hardware software interface issue. Can't blame anybody for it. But yeah, so we suggest doing that. And that's the end of our episode.
Yeah.
You know, right?
Well,
that's what we got to do.
I actually ran to Concord and like fought some raiders because I was waiting for the next like quest to pop up in my little thing.
That's right. Because it doesn't in here. You're right. You're right. I have my notes are wrong because we meet a little character here named Dogmeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you meet Dogmeat along the way?
Yep. As soon as you go outside of like your little sanctuary, like your little neighborhood, Sanctuary Hills, you hit a truck stop, or not really a truck. It's not even a fuel stop anymore because of the way that the Fallout world works. It's like a coolant stop.
Yeah. What do you think about Dogmeat being kind of shoved in our face right here at the top?
Oh, I don't like it.
I don't like it either. Because he's like discoverable in the rest of the games. And weirdly enough, has been rewritten into the history of the games as like critical, you know, like, but like half of them you don't need to get him. And there's really not one. There's just Rex in New Vegas, right? Like, I mean, you get a dog, but he's not the eternal dog,
right?
You know, yeah, I don't know. I didn't think I'd have any kind of reaction to this because like he's a dog, right? This was also part of the German Shepherdification of games.
Yeah,
you remember that moment in which Call of Duty Ghosts also had German Shepherds in them?
Yeah,
the coolest video game dogs, I guess. I really wonder about the market research that determined that everyone likes a German Shepherd enough to like not revolt when they appear in the game.
I mean, I can tell you it's my brother-in-law who really likes this game and has 2 German Shepherds.
You think they just called him on the phone?
I think so.
You think they were like, hey, brother-in-law?
Yeah.
Like, we've got a mom and a dad, but we need the perspective of a brother-in-law, you know, to really fill out this universe. You know, that's the person who did... The only objective perspective on a relationship as a brother-in-law,
Right.
ontologically.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't like it. I don't like that dog meat is kind of like shoved into the plot immediately in the game.
Yeah.
And I know that you can like reject him and make him go away, but I'm not going to do that. He's a dog. He can't live by himself.
Mm-hmm.
He dog.
Even though he was apparently before, I guess.
No. He had a master who died, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Dog man.
Yeah.
But you show up to Concord, and there's a bunch of raiders there, and I clonked them in the head with pull cue.
Yep. I shot them all. And then there's like the raiders have some people pinned down in a building, and you can hear the people in there shouting. And one of the guys in there like throws down a rifle to you, and he's like, "Come in and help us." And then that's when the next quest picks up. And that's when I stopped my notes for this episode.
Yeah, because it's a little museum you got to go into.
Mm-hmm.
It's called like the Museum of Freedom or something like that.
Yeah.
And you turn around. And, there's a nice, like, I really like in front of that street, the street you can kind of fight in. It's this, like, Main Street, Main Street USA.
Uh-huh.
I like that. There's something fun about that. But we'll learn more about that in the next episode. So where are you with Fallout 4? 30-second summary here in the first hour of play.
It's all right. It feels like Fallout. That's what I can say is, like, of all the things that are changed, there is something like about the feel of movement and looking and shooting that feels like continuity, and I'm interested in seeing where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that it's got it's a condensification.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's the instant coffee of Fallout. And I'm very curious because, again, I played it and reviewed it. I haven't gone back and read my review, and I probably won't until we finish the game, because I think that'd be fun to like compare my thoughts. But I reviewed it when like none of the DLC was out, so that's going to add like a whole other kind of deal going on here. But it is like I remember it being, and especially some stuff that we're going to talk about in the next episode are things that really made me be like, mm-hmm. But then also some of the other stuff in the next episode are things that made me go, oh yeah, this is good. This is like the promise of Fallout. So. I'm positive on it, and we'll see where it goes from there. Where can people find you on the internet, Michael?
Oh, you can find me on twitter.com @WarrenIsDead.
You can support this show on patreon.com/rangedtouch. There's a little link in the comments, or in the description, not in the comments, in the description below this episode, because you're watching it on youtube.com/rangedtouch. But if you want to listen to it as a podcast, you can go to patreon.com/rangedtouch. And support us for $3 a month, or go to rangetouch.com. Support us for $3 a month, and you can get an RSS feed that'll put this in your podcast app of choice, and you won't get the video, obviously, but you can just listen to it on the go if you want to do that. A little benefit for people who chuck a little bit of money our way, and you might enjoy some of our other shows, like Just King Things, where we read through the works of Stephen King in publication order, or Mages and Murder Dads, where Danny and I do a very similar show to this, but for all the Baldur's Gate games and games in the Baldur's Gate lineage. We got a show about Homestuck. We got a show about game studies, all kinds of stuff like that. You can go to rangetouch.com to check it out. And if you're just coming in for Fallout 4, think about watching, I don't know, the 50 episodes or so of this show before that.
It'll give you some context to all the stuff we have to say.
Right. I'll give you a little bit of context, and you'll probably like those too. See what Fallout 2 is about, and all that kind of stuff.
Check out the saga of Lucky Nell.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I think you'll enjoy all that stuff if you haven't already. And it'll give you a good idea, too, about where we're coming from sometimes, I think, in this game. Because Fallout 4 adds some wrinkles, I think, occasionally, but mostly smooths them out. And it's going. I think we're going to have a lot to say about that over the next million episodes of the show. So thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next episode, where we will be doing When Freedom Calls is the quest.
Uh-huh.
And I think another quest as well. I don't have it right in front of me here. The
I did
first
not
step.
write it down. Yeah.
Yeah, the first step, and then Sanctuary. Those are the three kind of quests that we're covering there. Fallout 4 is going to be a little bit weird as far as all this stuff is concerned, because, Fallout 4 adds in some kind of plot critical or like progression critical Radiant quests into it. So it's a little bit odd there. But, I promise we'll get there. So probably we won't have a roadmap necessarily for every episode, but that's what we're doing in the next one. We'll see you in episode 2 in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Everything changed when the bombs fell, except for war. Play